Afternoon, and welcome to K2's Road to Excellence with Excel Part 2 in Adagio. This is Alan Salmon, and I'm pleased that so many of you have been able to join me for our second webinar of 2018. As usual, I have a few announcements before we dive in. The first is, again, I will be teaching in Excel 2016. Not a problem for any of you on 2013, 10, and 7. You will be able to do everything that I do today with you and for you. Delighted again that my good friend Marilyn Benninger is my backup, and she is your go-to person for technical problems and for asking questions. And you ask all the questions that you want in the chat window, please. Now, there's rarely time at the end of the webinar for questions because we have so much content to cover. So the way we handle this now is that within 10 days of today, you will all receive the webinar recording, my teaching notes, my teaching files, your CPD certificates, and the question and answers to all of the questions that get asked in my session. And speaking of CPD certificates, 4 times today, Marilyn is going to stop and put up a polling question. Polling questions are multiple choice, usually 4, and the answers don't matter. What matters is that you're recorded as answering one of the choices, because that digitally stamps your presence. If you get 3 of the 4 recording, you will get 1 hour of verifiable CPD. If you don't, you'll get 1 hour of non-verifiable. And now I'm ready to start. So Marilyn, it's time for the first poll, please.
Great, here we go, everyone. We're starting our first poll. You should see it on your screen, and it's about using conditional formatting in Excel. So please select the answer that's closest to your experience. Have you ever used conditional formatting? It's slow start this morning. I'll need about 90% in order to close the poll. You've got 4 choices there. I'll be closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thanks, everyone. And there are your results. Alan, can you see those?
Yep, I sure can.
42% haven't, so I think that's a good start for today's session.
All right. So, all of us, and I'm including me in this, create fairly large workbooks. I've done one with 1 million rows. And the challenge for even one with 500,000 rows is understanding what the numbers mean. And conditional formatting is a tool to make data visible if it meets certain criteria. So for example, I'm going to go to this worksheet right here, and you'll notice that it's 7 columns and not a lot of data, but enough for what we want to do here. And by the way, when I'm teaching, I sometimes do things slower than I would if I'm working. There are tons of shortcuts that I use, but there are times when I'm teaching when I will use a slower one so you can follow along. So, focused on the selling price. I'm going to highlight that column. And here's the drill. I want Excel to highlight with a colored fill any cells where the selling price is over $55 and any place where the selling price is under 30. Now that's a 2-step process. We need to go to the Home tab and conditional formatting. And there are a whole bunch of choices here: highlight cell rules, top, bottom, data bars, color scales, icon sets, and so on. And I will cover all of these in the next 25 minutes. But we're going to start with highlight cell rules. Why? because look what the top item is, greater than. Well, I want $55, not 60. And it arbitrarily defaults to say, I guess you want light red fill with dark red text. And I'm good with that. So notice $56 is there, $81.79. Well, that's kind of cool. But let's do it again. And less than $35. Now, it makes no sense to use the same color background, but fortunately we have a number of choices and I will use them throughout. So let's go yellow fill with dark red text and let's go OK. So in yellow, there's all the numbers under $30 or 35, whatever I chose. There's all the numbers over 55. Interesting. Now, what happens if I want to change the color? Well, we go down here. And we go to conditional formatting, and we go all the way to the bottom, manage the rules, because we've set up two rules. And there we are. Cell value greater than 35, yellow. Cell value greater than 55. So let's take that, and let's go edit rule. And instead of red, let's go to format. And let's go to green. So now you can see that nothing is cast in stone. All right, let's go over here to B that has text. And here's the challenge. I want Excel to highlight any cells that are M compatible. Conditional formatting, and text that contains. Text that contains what? M compatible. And it's as simple as that. So what happens if I change my mind again? Not a problem. We go conditional formatting. We go to manage rules. There's our rule. Edit rule. Change this to L. And there we go. Now, there will be times when I have conditional formatting where I want to delete the condition. And that's very simple. Once again, we go to Manage Rules, Edit Rule or Delete Rule. I'm going to go Delete Rule. And notice that I still have two rules here. So I could select them and I could go and do a repeat twice of what I just did, but I'm going to do the shortcut here, which is clear rules from the entire sheet. Done. Now let's focus on the quantity here. And I'm going to do a conditional format that shows me the top 5 cells that have quantity in them. Conditional formatting. Highlight cell rules? Nope. Top and bottom rules? Yes. Now it defaults to the top 10 item. But it's easy to change 10 to 5. Just change the spinner. And there we go. So there's 3, and there's 2. Well, how about we go the other way to conditional formatting, top and bottom rules, and go to the bottom 5 items. And again, we need to change the color. So I'll take a moment to let you see the choices. Light red fill, dark red text, yellow fill, dark yellow, green fill, dark green, light red fill, red text, red border, and a custom format that I will get to in a bit. So let's go green fill. And there we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, this is one conditional format that I use a fair bit with large spreadsheets, and that is identifying the top whatever and the bottom whatever. Let's quickly clear that. And do something else. I'm going to go back here to column D. And I want to do a visual display of the data using data bars. Conditional formatting, data bars, and I'm going to pick blue because that's my favorite color. And notice what we've got. Now we have blue bars. And notice the variance in the width of the blue. Well, let's go down to the bottom, and let's go right here. 96 is the largest value in that set, and it's completely blue. $25 is that much blue, and that's the ratio of that number to the largest number. Use that once in a while. We can also do this a different way. So I'll highlight it again. And go to conditional formatting, color scales, and we'll pick the first one. Now I suspect that this one will drive you around the bend in terms of figuring out what it is. And we have 3 colors here. Variants of red, variances of yellow, and variants of green. When we get down here. So what Excel has done is it's taken this data set and sorted it or grouped it into 3 groups. The top tercile, the top third, the middle tercile, and the bottom tercile. The top tercile gets green, the middle tercile gets yellow, the bottom tercile gets red. And in the real life, I have to tell you, I've never used this for real. However, there's another flavor of this that I have used. And that is this, conditional formatting, icon sets. Well, I'm in the mood for stoplights today, so there we go. Now, what Excel has done here is exactly the same as the last time, broken it into terciles. And what I didn't tell you last time is that you can set the boundaries of where the breakpoints are. It's not difficult to do. I'm not going to take the time today to do it. So when would I use this? Well, if I'm creating a workbook for a client who doesn't know the difference between a debit and a credit, and we're doing a budget analysis, and I can do this in a separate column, I'll put the stoplights in to show the variance. Red means you're in trouble, yellow, you're okay, and green, you're ahead. Next. I have some zeros in this set. Notice them here. And that, of course, triggers a formula here. There are times when I don't want those zeros to display, but I don't want to lose the underlying number or the underlying formula. So you've noticed I've selected the whole data set. Then I'm going to go to conditional formatting. And I'm going to go to highlight cell rules, and I'm going to go equal to 0. Now, for the first time, I'm not going to use a color. I'm going to go to custom format. And when I get there, I get this window here. I'm going to go to font. And instead of automatic, I'm going to change the color to white. And there we go. The numbers are still there. And by the way, when you get the recording next week, and get my notes, everything that I'm doing here is made very clear in the notes with screenshots. And you have my 2 files that I'm working with, so you can work this through on your own because I know I'm covering it very fast. So that's kind of cool. Now, let's do some totally different stuff. And that is one of the things that drives me around the bend sometimes is duplicate entries. Now, yes, I know that I can get rid of all of the duplicates by going to the Data tab and going to Remove Duplicates. The problem for me in doing that is I have no idea which duplicates were removed, and it's not undoable. So instead of that, watch this using conditional formatting. I go to conditional format, I go to highlight cell rules, and gee whiz, duplicate values. And I'm happy with red fill. So what's happened? Well, there's my duplicate values. Now it just happens that they are all at the top, the way this data set is sorted. But in the real world, they won't be. They'll scatter here, there, and everywhere. So the easiest way to deal with those, because I want to delete some, is to do a sort, and you can do a sort on the background color. Moving along. To this one. You'll notice over here that I have a bunch of dates. And up here in G1, I have August the 1st, 2015, November the 1st, 2015, and there's dates outside of that range. So here's my challenge. I want Excel to highlight any cell that falls within that range of August to November. Pretty easy to do. I'm going to go to conditional formatting. And for the first time, I'm going to go to new rule. And you'll notice that I can select a rule based on their values, cells that contain, top and bottom, above or below average, unique or duplicate values. But what I want is use a formula to determine which cell. And I'm going to copy and paste that formula because it would take too much time for me to type it. So here we go. And you're going to say that is certainly a weird formula. Equal and $G4 greater than $G $1, comma, $G4 less than $G $2. And that's the Excel's way of doing multiple if statements. So to translate that into real English, What Excel is really going to do is this. If G4 and the numbers in G going down is greater than G1, then highlight it, but only if G4 is less than G2. So let's set a format. And what do we want? We want cell background. So we'll go to fill, and let's take a nice light green. Bingo. There's the cells that fall between that range. And I use that a fair bit. Let's change reports now after I clear this and go to a different one for what I want to do next. And that is this. Well, I got a nice budget here. I got budget numbers, I've got actual numbers in the variance. And here's the challenge. I want Excel to highlight any cell where the variance is greater than 0.1, i.e. 10%. Okay. I'm going to highlight the data set. And I'm going to, there we go. Whoops. And once again, I'm going to copy. So just give me a second to do this. And here we go. So conditional formatting. Go down to new rule. Again, I want to use a formula. And the formula is this. Now, in the big box over here, I've got the formulas a little bit bigger. So let's forget the ABS. What this is saying is divide G5 by E5. So G5 is the variance. E5 is the budget number. And if it's greater than 0.1, highlight the cell. Now, you're probably puzzled by what the ABS is doing there. And it's there because I want to strip out the sign, plus sign and minus sign. And what ABS stands for is absolute. So check the value of the cells going down there. And if it's greater than 10%, highlight it. So I've got the formula in there. I'm going to go to format. And I'll use that format. And there we go. Now, notice something different. Not only does it highlight the cell that's got the variance greater than 10%, it highlights the whole row. And the reason it did that is that I selected the whole data set. So if I want the conditional format to apply across columns, I'll select the whole data set. And I've got one more, and then I'll wrap up. So let's go back to here, and let's go here. Now, what I have here is a table to record working hours for David Mosek for the month of October. And I'm going to highlight this, but notice that once I get beyond the 10th, there are no numbers there. So here's the deal. I want to know, with a background color, what cells have values in for editing, administration, recording, or content. And I'm going to do that again with a conditional format. New rule. And I need to copy. And there we go. So, use a formula to determine? Absolutely. And here comes another weird formula. Equal is number B9. So what that is saying is check all the cells from B9 to whatever. And if there is a number there, because there's a number above, there's a formula there that adds that, then highlight it and understand the definition of number. It does not include 0 and it does not include text. So let's do a format. Let's do the border. No, let's do the fill. And let's do a gray background this time. And notice now that all the cells that contain data are in gray. So let's put something in here. Gee whiz, do you see what happened? So now at the end of the month, all I've got to do is scroll across, and if there's any blanks there, I know something's missing. So I hope I've shown you how valuable conditional formatting is. I use it all the time in various ways, and I've shown you the various ways today. So Marilyn, it's time for the last poll for me.
All right, folks. Here's the last poll for Alan. Do you have problems with rounding errors in your workbooks? Some of you, it drives you crazy. Sometimes you have problems. You might be using the round function, or perhaps precision as displayed, and it solved all the problems. Now, Alan, you're going to give us a hint about why you're asking this question.
Yeah, this is the lead-in to what I'm going to do in the first session as part of the first session in February. I'm going to show you how you will never, ever again have a problem with rounding. Applause, please. And let's see the results. So the bottom one, I use precision as displayed and it solved all my problems, is what I'm going to show you in February. So thank you for your time. Marilyn, it's time to hand off to my good friend Andrew Bates, and I'll be back at the end to wrap up.
Thanks, Alan. All right, Andrew, you have the comm. I'm just going to unmute you.
Thank you, Marilyn. That was great, Alan. I really enjoyed that presentation. I learned a couple of things. There's always something new to learn when it comes to Excel. And it's always fun to do one of these and imagine that the weather's better somewhere on the planet than it is here, where it's gray and I can hardly see the city from my window in the office. We're going to talk about Adagio just for 25 minutes or so. This is set up as a three-part series for January, February, and March. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about Adagio from the accountant's perspective, from so very specifically centering on what Adagio offers an accountant, either someone who is doing public practice or is working in an organization with an accounting department, with an AP clerk and an AR clerk, and those kind of things, and how Adagio can help you with the audit. I'll do a little bit of Adagio fundamentals. We've covered that quite a bit at the end of 2016, and I'm going to focus on just the GL and the financial reporter in Adagio, because those are the main module. That's the main module used for client write-up, and also is where most people go when they're doing an audit and getting ready for an audit. So I'm going to talk about that. The topic today is just Adagio itself, and we're going to talk about the GL and how it's set up and what it allows you to do, how the transactions flow within Adagio, what the core reports, of course, those are the most important reports, the trial balance and the GL detailed listing, and some of those kind of, just to give you a sense of how Adagio approaches the GL, which I'm always surprised is not the most fascinating module for people, but except there's usually one person in the organization whose job it is to produce operational statements for managers and department managers and the board of directors and senior executives and the bank and all of those people. And they are interested in the financial reporter and the tools that are available in the GL. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to, well, I should first say what Adagio is, right? So Adagio, we've been selling Adagio since 1999, so it's been on the market for 18 years. We're batch-based, we're multi-user, we're multi-currency, we're modular. So if you just need the general ledger and accounts payable, you can just buy the general ledger and accounts payable and make use of those two modules. Or we have specialized modules for wholesale distribution, a very powerful purchase order module for people who want to control costs within their organization, job costing, time and billing, all of those things. You can see there's a large number of modules available within Adagio. We've had the same R&D crew for all the years that we've been developing Adagio, so can't get them to stop production. So usually in a product that's this mature, you'll find that most of the functionality that you're interested in looking at is taken care of. So what other things can I tell you? Well, so if you're doing client write-up, many accountants in public practice use Simply Accounting or QuickBooks to do their client write-up, although those solutions are not actually designed to do client write-up. They're designed to run a small business or organization, and they don't really take into account the kind of things that an accountant is faced with when they're entering transactions after the fact. So if you're doing client write-up, one of the things that Adagio lets you do is, well, first of all, you can post to any account in the GL, even the tax accounts and the GST payable accounts. Any account in the GL is available to be posted to. And you can get combined or departmental financial statements without having to go to Excel. And we're going to spend a bit of time, actually, the whole second session in February talking about the financial reporter, but I'll drop in there a little bit today. We have lots of customized reporting. I'm just going to touch on two of the reports, the trial balance and the GL detailed listing, but you'll see that there's many different formats that you can produce those two central reports in, and also the financial reporter is completely flexible. And one of the market segments that we are particularly strong in, the not-for-profits and First Nation space, have a very difficult financial reporting requirement. And we have done some features within the Adagio accounting suite specifically for not-for-profits, such as the ability to open next year's budgets without opening next year, so that you can get a jump on your budget entry in the GL. A couple of things that are really nice if you're subject to audit. First of all, you can go from the financial statement. You can be looking at a number on the financial statement and drill all the way down to the source document of the transaction. So let me just show you that. We'll start up the GL. Just to give you a flavor of what it's like. We have a full security model within Adagio. You log in with a user ID and password. We log the activity that you as an individual have within the Adagio accounting suite, the batches you create, the batches you post, the customers you change, the orders you enter, the purchase orders you create. And this is a new version. Every time we do a new version, we produce a 6-minute video of what's new so that people can see what's going on. So now I'm sitting in the general ledger. You noticed it launched off its own shortcut. Well, I didn't show you the shortcut because it's actually on my other screen here. But you have a separate shortcut that you put on everyone's desk, and you can just put the shortcuts for the modules that they work in. And on the top right-hand corner, there are the other modules that I might want to switch over to. I'm looking at the transactions and budgets selection screen within Adagio. I'm looking at a chart of accounts here with the balances in the accounts as at a particular period. One of the features within Adagio is that this grid is completely customizable. So if I'm not using the forecasts, I can get rid of the forecast figure and just see the current balance and budget. So the grids are customizable, easily and quickly customizable by user. And whenever I'm looking at a grid, you'll often see this Excel Direct button on the right-hand side of the grid. And whenever I am looking at a grid, if I click the Excel Direct button, what I'm looking at gets dropped into Excel as a table. So I can create pivot tables, I can do filtering and sorting and all the other good things that Excel is capable of doing. So there's very easy to use integration within an Adagio module and within Excel. So it's one of the nice things if you're trying to do some analysis and you just know intuitively how you would get to that in Excel because you're an Excel wizard for taking all of Alan's courses, then sometimes it's just easier to get the stuff in Excel and work from there. So I said that I'd show you, the financial reporter in Adagio is a full spreadsheet. And one of the things that Adagio offers is when you're looking at a number in the financial reporter, you can drill down and see all the accounts and departments that were summed to get to that number. And then you can click on a particular account and department and see what was posted throughout the fiscal year. And then you can click on a particular month and see the transactions that were posted in that month. And then you can click on a particular transaction and see the balance journal entry. So this is the balance journal entry from that $80 transaction. And you'll notice over here, there's a view button. So if I'm curious about the source transaction, I can click on the view and see the source invoice from which that transaction was generated. And this transaction that I'm looking at in the financial reporter was actually attached to the entry in accounts payable and has followed that entry all the way through. You can attach as many documents as you want to a single entry, and the number of documents that you attach does not affect processing speed at all. And the document library is maintained separately from the accounting data itself. So you're not backing up thousands of documents as you're backing up your accounting data. And you can move the document library from place to place, so from one disk drive to another or one folder to another, without breaking any of the links in the accounting system. So if you have originally, stored all your PDFs on a particular volume and the disk drive goes bad, or you want to get a bigger disk drive, or you decide you want to move it into an archive, network archive storage volume, you can do that and not break any of the links within the Adagio accounting suite. So for an auditor, that means that they can be looking at reports or transactions. So if I was an auditor and I was looking at in the chart of accounts, and I'm let's look for office expense description contains office. I can find the account I'm interested in looking at, and then to double click to see the transactions. And you'll see on this view of all the transactions that have been posted through this account, on the right-hand side of the screen, I can attach additional documents to a transaction, even though it's posted, or I can see the documents that have already been attached by clicking on the spectacle button. Apparently, I'm the only person in North America called these spectacles. Someone in the QA department said, "Oh, I thought it was a bicycle running downhill," and another person said, oh, I thought it was a pair of handcuffs, but it's not. It's a pair of eyeglasses. So if you're an auditor, this means, or just someone who works in the GL or in the financial reporter, this means that you can find a source document with if it's been scanned with someone's signature on it, or the GL account coding was written on the form. You can be in the GL and just double click on the document and see the document without having to intercom the AP clerk or walk over to the filing cabinet and find and hopefully find the document that you're looking for. So I think, hang on, let's go back to our, the other thing, just for those of you who are in public practice, you should know that if you have a client running Adagio, you can just directly import the transactions and chart of accounts into Caseware. So we are fully integrated with Caseware. Caseware knows about Adagio. It knows how to pull the transactions into the working papers module. So we like batches, just to let you know, we like batches because it allows you to check someone's work. So if you have a new person working in the accounting department or working in your office, you can make sure that they have properly coded the transactions before they get posted. It makes it easy to train staff. It increases control because you can print out batch listings to verify the account allocation before the transaction gets posted. You can have one person do data entry and another person do posting. You can tell who posted transactions and who entered transactions. And as the volume of transactions going through the accounting department increases, businesses move there naturally. They move to batches naturally because it offers control points to the people for whom control is important. If the business or organization takes credit cards, at the end of the day, there's a closed batch on credit cards. Daily bank deposits are really a batch. You get timesheets in batches. Batches allow totals to control back to the source documents. So let's see, just before we keep on going, I'd like to just find out whether what accounting software you might be familiar with. So I have a poll here of what accounting software you might be using or familiar with or have experience with, and oh, that's interesting. We have quite a few others, so I'm curious to see. For those of you who are ticking the other box, I would be interested if you'd put in the chat or question box the other modules that you're running, because the ones on the list and the first four in the list represent far and a huge majority of the accounting software within Canada, and the U.S. So that's great. I'll close the poll and just share it with you so that you can see the list. About half of you are using Sage 50 or Simply Accounting. I apologize I almost put Simply in brackets, and then I thought, well, everyone will know what I'm talking about. A lot of QuickBooks users, Business Vision, a few Business Vision users, and a bunch of Sage 300 or Dynamics GP users. So thank you for that. It'll allow me to tailor the discussion quite a bit. So let's go back to the Adagio GL and chat a little bit about the chart of accounts. So the two major entry-level products have a built-in chart of accounts. They don't really allow you to define your own. When you create a new account, you tell the accounting module where you want that account to reside on your income statement or balance sheet. Within Adagio, you have a completely user-defined chart of accounts. Typically, they're numbers to speed data entry, and because people are trained in using account numbers, so the fixed assets will be accounts 1,000 to 1099 or 1,009. 1999, and then the liabilities will be the 2000 series, and retained earnings will be 3,000, and the income will be 4,000, and the expenses will be 5,000, and maybe the clearing accounts are due to due from will be in the 900 series, but you have your completely self-defined chart of accounts, and departments are optional. So it's a 2-segment chart of accounts. Now, one of the nice things in Adagio is when you create a department, that department is not available for all accounts like it is in Simply or it is in QuickBooks. So you can say this department only exists for this account, or within this department, you can only reference these accounts. So that prevents data entry errors and amounts being assigned to the wrong department, because you can, well, it minimizes those. Doesn't make it impossible to assign them to the wrong department, but it makes it much less likely. You can also make it impossible to assign an expense to just at the account level. So you can insist that someone allocate to a specific department. The other thing about Adagio is that the financial statement layout is completely independent of the structure of your chart of accounts, which means that you can design operational statements which actually show people the information that they need in a presentation that they want. So our financial reporter is a full spreadsheet with all of the computational horsepower of Excel and most of its formatting. So you can, for those of you who do financial statements outside of your part of accounts, you know that often you're forced to move to Excel because you just can't get the presentation the way you want. The general ledger supports 12 or 13 fiscal periods and includes a separate period for year-end adjustments. So you can post the accountant's year-end adjustments, which typically involve moving revenue and expenses off the P&L and up into the balance sheet without distorting the month-over-month operating statements that you're creating for an operational basis. So when you post to the prior year, you can post to a year-end adjusting period. I have another question for you, since the question is, do you departmentalize your GL? So are departments important to you for within your operation? Often it's used to, in a hotel, it would be used to separate out room revenue and the spa and the gift shop and perhaps some tourist booth. In First Nation, it's used for health and social services and education and mental health and all of those things. In a community living association, it would be used for the different homes that the community living association is supporting. I've seen it used for a different department for every patient. I'll just show you. So half of you, over half of you, 2/3 of you are using departments. So that's interesting, because Adagio has a very strong departmental reporting. So hang on a second, clicked on the wrong thing. So the other thing that's interesting is that can be a problem in the GL is things being posted to the wrong account. So there's some things you can do within the GL to prevent people from posting to the wrong general ledger account. First of all, you can mark an account inactive. Now, in the general ledger, if you mark an account inactive, so I'll say that Department 250-6675 cannot post to meals and entertainment. So let's close this, go to maintain, go to meals and entertainment. Meals and entertainment, here we are. So I'm going to make this department inactive. Now, when I make it inactive, no one can post to that. And in fact, on the grid, I can say, only show me the active record. So now my description contains meals. Okay, I'll go to this one. You'll notice that Department 250 has disappeared. It hasn't disappeared entirely, because you can see from the Finder it's still here, but it doesn't appear on the grid, which makes it difficult for people to change when they're entering transactions. The other thing that you can do is, so you can mark an account inactive, and so if anyone tries to post to that account, it'll bounce, the transaction will bounce into an error batch. You can close specific periods. So when you've done your period end close, you can actually go and close the period in the fiscal calendar. So I can say, this period, I'm finished with period 1, and now if anyone tries to post to period 1, that transaction will bounce into an error batch, and you can decide whether to reopen period 1, which is within your purview as the chief financial officer or controller, or you can change the fiscal period of the transaction. Because one of the nice things about batches is that we allow you to have a fiscal period on the transaction that's independent of the date of the transaction. We also can prevent you from posting from an unexpected source. So if you have an AR control account, so we'll go down to our accounts payable trade, I can say that within this account, I only want this account to be posted to from the GL or from accounts payable. In my data here, I only have the general ledger. If I have other modules, they'll be listed here, and I can say transactions in this account can only come from this module, which prevents people inadvertently choosing an account and posting to it. This day's going fast. We have budgeting within the GL. So we have 2 budgets per year, a budget and a forecast. We looked at lots of different models. We saw one accounting product that had 99 different budgets, and we thought that was a bit excessive because that's a new budget every 2.5 days. And we just think that if you have that many budgets, the accounting department's going to wonder which budget they should be printing on which particular financial statement. So we have one set of budget figures that you can set up at the beginning of the year and agree to, and you can lock the budgets once those have been approved. And then 6 months in, when the world is not going quite the way you expected, you can copy all the budget figures to a forecast buckets and then play with those a bit and move the numbers around between various departments. When you create new budgets, you can start them all with $0 in them when you're creating a new year, or you can copy the previous year's budgets into those figures and just update this year's budget figures. You can enter budget figures into the buckets on the GL. There's a budget amount for every single period in the GL, you can just enter year-to-date years budget numbers, and we'll prorate them across the 12 budgets in the year. You can import figures from an Excel spreadsheet. You can import just the year's budgets, and we'll automatically do the 12-month proration, or you can specify a budget amount for each individual account department pair. So departments can have their own budgets. You can have as many departments as you wish. I think the largest GL I've seen had 450 departments in it. At some stage, so for instance, if you try and do job costing within the general ledger, that can become a bit of a headache if you have lots of jobs in a year. But I have seen departments used in organizations that just have a few jobs in the year. Departments have budgets, and you can do departmental financial statements with a budget for the department. Every department can close to a different retained earnings account. So you can keep track of free funds from a particular granting agency or funding agency in a separate account, and you can close individual departments one at a time. So you can close each department as they're ready to be closed. That can help you with your year end. It can also allow a department to run on a slightly different fiscal calendar than the entire GL. And finally, you can mark a department as inactive. If you're finished with a department, you can prevent anyone from posting to any of that department's accounts. In an organization that's subject to audit, you often want to have a soft year end. As I mentioned earlier, today you can open your budgets before you open the new year. You have full financial reporting in the new year prior to closing the year. We still have a specific close year function. And then when the adjustments come back, or you finish with the year adjustments, you post them in a special posting run to the prior year. And our financial reporter is a full spreadsheet. I've mentioned before that we're batch-based. We have both active and archive batches, so your recurring entries can all be sitting in an archive batch, and you can retrieve them and then post them, changing the fiscal period, changing the description, changing the reference. We have full posting journals. We have batches marked ready to post, so you can be halfway through entering a batch and it won't be posted until someone comes along and mark it ready to post. If you inadvertently delete a batch, we can recover it for you. If you post a batch and then discover it went to the wrong fiscal period, we can unpost it for you. We can demand that a batch be printed before it's posted, just so that someone has proofed it if necessary. And finally, you can import batches directly from Excel or comma-separated text file if you want. Reports, obviously, batch listing and posting journal. You can ask if you have big batches coming in from subledgers. You can say, just show me the transactions that are in error. Maybe there's a wrong fiscal period, or something got coded to a GL account that has subsequently been made inactive. You can print a summary at the end of the batch listing, which will give you the account departments, the total amount being posted to each account department, which can make proofing a batch much faster. And finally, we have the trial balance and GL detailed listing. I'll just briefly go over to the reports menu. I'll show the GL detailed listing and show you the kind of options that you have available when you print the GL detailed listing. First of all, you'll notice these red buttons. Every report in Adagio can be printed directly to PDF and dropped into a file folder that you want automatically. The user doesn't have to name the PDF. We'll file it for you automatically. You'll notice down here that I can choose within whether I'm sorted by account department or department account. I can change the order the transactions are presented within the GL detailed listing. We support units of measure on transactions coming into, so you can do revenue and expense per patient day or per liter of gas pumped. We have two descriptions. You may choose on the GL detailed listing to show one or both of them. We support detailed listings that go across your year end and across fiscal years. So if you have a big fixed asset accounts and you want to see all the transactions that were posted to this fixed asset account in the last 5 years, you can do that in the GL detailed listing. And there are some options about whether inactive accounts are included or accounts with no activity, whether prior year postings are going to be included, page break on change of accounts, so you can paginate the report if you want. And you can actually have a GL detailed listing that doesn't list all the transaction details if you want. Our final poll for today is within your typical chart of accounts, how many segments do you typically need in your GL? So I know that many people are using a single segment, and in a small business that's quite typical. Often, one of the things when I've seen lots of segments in the GL, when I see complex chart of accounts, I always think that some programmer organized that chart and didn't think about the poor AP clerk that has to do the data entry and the complex coding that multiple segments require. It's really a question about reporting, and I'm going to show you next week that that the financial reporter, even though we're just a two-segment GL, we do support slicing and dicing through the account department to give you the benefit of multiple segments in the chart. That just wraps up my time for the day. I thank you so much for your attention, and I think that's it. Next week or next month, we're going to talk about the financial reporter. Thank you all for your attention, and I turn the floor back to Marilyn. There she is.
Thank you, Andrew. Wonderful as always. Alan, I've given you back control. We don't see it. There you go.
In the next 10 days, you will receive the recording, my teaching notes, my teaching files, and your CPD certificate and the answers to any questions that have been asked. And finally, when you close out of here, you will be asked to do a short survey. I think there's 7 questions there. As many of you are aware, I am in the process of doing a major survey on accounting technology and accounting firm operations. And if you haven't participated in, one of the questions says, send me the link to the survey, and I'd appreciate as many of those as possible. So we're done. See you all next month. It's a wrap.